professor, physician, epidemiologist. I am Dr. Sri Banerjee. Hello, I'm Dr. Sri Banerjee, core faculty for the College of Health Sciences and Public Policy at Walden University. And in this video, I'm going to be going over a really serious and important topic, and that is pertaining to housing insecurity and renal function. So I'm going to get to the renal function part in a minute here. But just thinking about housing insecurity and uncertainty and just not knowing from month to month if you will be able to make rent. And so most Americans actually reside in circumstances where they're trying to just make ends meet from month to month, and don't really have the ability to think about generational income or amassing such things. So this is kind of a good overview, but in the course of this video I'm going to show you some maps and provide you with some tools so that you yourself can create and generate some interesting maps that can then lead to important, interesting sorts of policy recommendations and interventions. So let's get started. So I'm also going to talk about redlining here, and in just a moment. But just thinking about how historically, whenever there has been times that the economy hasn't done well, housing has suffered, and that's something that's an important connection to think about just on a broad level before we talk about anything. So what happened in the late 20s, of course, the market crashed and there was the Great Depression, and a lot of people had lost their jobs, and they had to join Redlines and try to figure out how to make ends meet. So one of the important programs that was created is to try to rescue Americans that were trapped in kind of a debt cycle from potentially foreclosed mortgages. So what happened there was that there was all of a sudden a need to try to determine, what areas were fit for developing more, and what areas, because there was a demand for a lot of to develop these areas. So some places were deemed valuable as good investments, and some places were devalued. And unfortunately, those areas that were devalued were also areas where African Americans resided. And so this is what historic redlining comes from. So just trying to extrapolate that and thinking about modern day, it actually affects Latinx communities and other Black and Brown communities disproportionately. So there's actually also kind of a overall fear that there may be, because the housing prices are the highest that they've been, the 19.2%, households would have to spend a third of their income for an average home. Now most places, most economists do not see this as a similar bubble that led to the recession in 2008. Most economists don't see this as something of a housing bubble, but there are some concerns about this. So just to keep an eye about this. And the other important point from that is that when you do have economic downturns, they do negatively impact the population. So why am I showing kidneys now? Just thinking about dialysis centers. So when you think about renal insufficiency, this is something that is a gradual process from chronic diseases. So typically stage 1 and stage 2 chronic kidney disease is something that takes place commonly as you age. If you look at the Cockcroft-Gault equation, then you'll see that age is actually one of the variables that contributes. But when you're thinking about stage 3, stage 4, stage 5, this is when you start to use and start to lose your ability to use your kidneys. So specifically, you're actually purifying the blood and making sure a lot of the toxins are removed from your blood. So if you just look at each nephron, so up here you have the glomerulus, and I'm gonna use a laser pointer here, but you have the glomerulus, and the Bowman's capsule, and here's the loop of Henle. So there's millions of loops of Henle that makes the cortex versus the medulla of the kidney. So this is where a lot of, in the countercurrent loop, this is where a lot of the toxins are being removed, and the nutrients that are needed are remaining within the blood. So this is a gradual process, and then when the critical role of the kidney is lost, then you're having to go into dialysis. So that's the process, and now let's look at some of the mapping relationships here. But before that, I wanted to kind of reiterate this understanding of redlining and how during the New Deal, the disinvestment and the devaluation led to some of the overall effects that you'll see manifest today. So, these are actually some of the first attempts to create relational maps between, to my knowledge, between dialysis centers and and I'm going to be looking at 3 cities. So dialysis centers versus redlining. So the 2 maps are as follows: the dialysis facilities in the United States, and then the homeowners loan corporation neighborhood redlining. These are the 2 maps. So historical redlining grade includes, in the map includes 7,148 neighborhoods spanning 143 cities in the United States. So today we're not really looking at, in this video, all of them. We're just concerned with 3 cities and multiple neighborhoods. So this is as a result of appraisers who were trained in the 1930s. Again, just going into some of the redlining details that I described to you in a previous slide. But just to reiterate the fact that D was considered red. So this was actually quite literally, as you'll see in the maps, red. So let me show you. So, and I'm going to explain this to you. Dialysis, of course, is for removing waste, but keeping keeping safe levels of certain chemicals like potassium, sodium, and bicarbonate. That's important. But third, very importantly, is controlling blood pressure. So a lot of times you'll be taking some ACEs or ARBs, and affecting the renin, angiotensin, aldosterone system pathway to maintain balance. So this is why, this is kind of a connection. So important if neighborhoods lack equity, then your personal balance and overall health is affected. So this is looking at a map from Chicago, and quickly this will reveal that just looking at some of these maps, you'll see the areas which are redlined. So the areas that have been disinvested have been provided. So like areas like West Willow Park right here. And so what I was trying to look at is, are there dialysis centers? And the larger the circle means the more availability. So there's one there, and then one right here, and the names are all provided. So if you count the number of stars, I counted and provided stars 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So, and then 9. So I think there's about, I believe, about 8 from what I can see here in Chicago, which are located in redline districts, which is a really good point and an important point, because these are the areas which were, as you know, resource poor areas. So these are marginalized communities. So having access to important health resources is really important. So now we switch gears and look at Baltimore, and just a quick look, we see 5 in Baltimore. And I spent a lot of time in some of these dialysis centers seeing patients in Baltimore, but here's all of them. And with my nephrology work, I was able to kind of participate and really see patients as they were going through their different phases. So looking over here, there's actually an additional one located on the outskirts of Baltimore. And again, these are the dialysis centers that are located in the redlined areas. So now looking at Pittsburgh, there's actually 3. So just comparing qualitatively, just overall cursory looking at the 3 cities, I found that Pittsburgh had the least number of dialysis centers in redlined areas. And so that's the DeVita Northside Clinic right here, and then the DeVita Homestead, and then I believe it's the Fresenius Kidney Care 3 Rivers. So here's a quick comparison of dialysis centers in redlined areas in 3 major cities: Chicago, Baltimore, and Pittsburgh, within the United States. So you've learned not only some pathophysiology and some social variables, but also at the very end, how to go into ArcMap and relate some of these that can be easily constructed in less than 10 minutes. And please visit some of my other tutorials to look at how to construct those. Thank you for listening.